From a very early age, without you realizing it, an idea was planted inside you. The idea that you are not enough. It wasn't something you chose to believe. It was imposed, repeated in glances, cutting words, and silent comparisons. We grow up in a society that teaches us to see ourselves as a problem to be fixed, a flaw to be hidden, a shame to be carried. School, family, friends, the media, all participate in this invisible construction. And little by little, you begin to believe that there is something fundamentally wrong with being who you are. Alfred Adler, one of the great masters of psychology, saw this brutal truth long before it was popularized. He understood that the feeling of inferiority is not natural. It is a creation, a product of comparisons, unrealistic expectations, and failures that, instead of being treated as part of life, are used as evidence to justify self-deprecation. You were not born hating yourself. You were taught to do so. And as long as you continue to carry this belief as if it were your own, you will remain chained to a lie that was not created by you, but that now only you can destroy. Today, we will expose this lie. We will cross the curtain of illusions that made you believe you are small, incapable, or unworthy. We will dive into Adler's mind, understand his relentless view on the inferiority complex, and reveal the antidote he offered. A path that is not based on empty self-help, but on a profound transformation of how you see yourself and position yourself in the world. This video is a call for you to stop fighting against yourself and start fighting alongside yourself. Because the truth is simple. As long as you believe you are less than you are, the world will continue to treat you as such. If you are ready to face the origin of your pain and take back the power that has always been yours, stay with me. Let's destroy the lie. Let's rebuild your self-image, and this time, consciously. At the beginning of the 20th century, Alfred Adler, breaking away from the more deterministic views of psychoanalysis, introduced one of the most powerful and dangerous concepts in psychology, the inferiority complex. For Adler, the feeling of inadequacy was not just a personal flaw or an isolated consequence of the lives of certain individuals. It was an inevitable part of the human experience. Every human being, from childhood, faces their own smallness in the world. We are fragile, powerless, dependent. And it is this initial feeling that becomes the fertile ground where the inferiority complex can flourish. The child, upon realizing their limitations, naturally feels that something is missing. This feeling, in itself, is not destructive. On the contrary, Adler believed that this perception of inferiority could be the driving force for overcoming, for growth, and for the construction of great achievements. The strength that drives great deeds arises from the awareness that we are not yet what we could be. It is the tension between who we are and who we can become that fuels our desire to evolve. The problem is that this healthy impulse is easily corrupted. And it is here that the origin of true poison begins. When the child is constantly exposed to criticism, disdain, rejection, comparisons, and unattainable expectations, the feeling of inferiority ceases to be a stimulus for growth and transforms into an open wound, into a painful conviction that they are, at their core, inadequate. It is not that they need to grow. It is that they believe something in their nature is irreparably wrong. Families, often unconsciously, plant these seeds by making disproportionate demands, by comparing children to one another, by projecting their personal frustrations onto the children. Phrases like, "Why can't you be like your brother? You never do anything right," or even the cold silence in the face of a failed attempt, create, within the young person, a poisonous narrative. I am less. I am insufficient. Adler also observed that this feeling is reinforced in the school environment, where standardization and comparison are pillars of the system. The individuality of the person does not matter. What matters is how they fit into the cold metrics of academic performance. Personal value begins to be measured not by character, sensitivity, or courage, but by numbers, awards, and external validations. Thus, what was supposed to be a natural phase of human development, the perception of limitation and the struggle for overcoming, degenerates into an identity marked by shame, insecurity, and self-sabotage. The child learns not only to perceive their flaws, but to identify with them. They do not say, "I made a mistake." They say, "I am a mistake." Adler went even further. He realized that, once established, the inferiority complex creates a self-perpetuating dynamic. The individual, dominated by the feeling of being lesser, begins to avoid challenges, to sabotage themselves in the face of opportunities, to seek to hide their vulnerabilities at all costs. And by doing so, they further reinforce their belief in their incapacity. It is a brutal, vicious cycle. Inferiority feeds evasion, evasion feeds inferiority, and the human being is reduced to a fearful caricature of what they could have been. But Adler did not see this as destiny. For him, the origin of the complex was also the key to its overcoming. The awareness that the feeling of inferiority was learned, and not an absolute truth, is the first step to dismantling the inner prison. Therefore, before we move on to the next part, stop and reflect. What were you taught about who you are? What ideas, installed in your still young mind, continue to silently command your choices, your fears, your limitations? Because now that you understand how the inferiority complex was born within you, it is time to go even deeper. To understand how the world you live in actively works every day to keep that feeling alive, and even profits from it. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. If the inferiority complex is born in childhood, as Adler demonstrated, society is the fuel that keeps that flame alive, sometimes so intensely that it turns into an internal fire. You need to understand, the world we live in is not interested in your liberation. It depends on your insecurity to survive. From a very early age, you were thrown into systems that constantly reinforce the idea that there is something wrong with being who you are. School was your first laboratory of systematic comparison. From the beginning, you learned that there is an invisible ruler and your worth will be measured by it. Report cards, tests, sports competitions, performance rankings. It doesn't matter your unique potential, your hidden talents, or your distinctive characteristics. Everything is reduced to numbers, positions, and trophies. Every little failure, every small victory of others is a silent reminder. You are not enough. Something is still missing. And that was just the beginning. The society you grew up in was shaped to exploit your insecurities as an economic resource. The media, which should broaden your view of the world, has turned into a factory of unattainable standards. Advertisements, movies, social media, all feeding daily the idea that there is an ideal model of success, beauty, happiness, and that evidently you are still far from it. The goal is not to inform or inspire. The goal is to create desire, and desire arises from the feeling of lack. Every image, every ad, every influencer exists to reinforce in you the idea that, to be worthy, to be seen, to be loved, you need to consume something, a product, a lifestyle, a new identity. And then comes the market, voracious, offering solutions to problems it itself helped create. Do you feel inadequate? Buy new clothes. Do you feel insecure? Take a personal success course. Do you feel unhappy? Change your appearance. Companies don't just sell products, they sell the hope of acceptance. They sell the illusion that you can finally be enough if you consume what they offer. And when the promised relief doesn't come, because it never does, the cycle repeats. More dissatisfaction, more consumption, more control. The dynamic is as subtle as it is cruel. The culture of comparison is turned into the norm. You are encouraged to measure yourself all the time. Social media amplifies this brutally. You not only compare your body, your life, and your achievements, you even compare the way you feel pain, how you suffer, how you overcome. Nothing is truly yours. Everything becomes a stage. Everything becomes performance. Within this system, even human relationships are corrupted. Relationships become silent contracts of mutual validation. You are important as long as you meet expectations. You are loved as long as you play the expected role. Who you truly are, with your flaws, your doubts, your silent struggles, is rarely accepted. Often, not even by yourself. Adler understood that the human being, naturally social, is also vulnerable to social manipulation. When society values only superficial shine, external success, and the appearance of happiness, it pushes you to live a facade life. You wear masks not to protect yourself from others, but to protect yourself from a society that turns any imperfection into a reason for exclusion. And so, day after day, you are conditioned to believe that you are inferior, not by chance, but by design. Not because you truly are less, but because an entire system needs you to continue feeling that way to function. Now that you see this mechanism, it's time to understand the true rupture that Adler proposed. Because unlike what the world taught you, overcoming inferiority is not about becoming better in the eyes of others. It's about completely transcending the game of comparison. And it is exactly this revolutionary vision that we will reveal in the next part. While many psychologists of the time delved into theories about traumas, unconscious impulses, and psychic fatalism, Alfred Adler did something extraordinary. He rejected the idea that human beings were victims condemned by their circumstances. Adler saw something that others ignored: the human capacity to transcend their own wounds. For him, the feeling of inferiority was not just an inevitable curse. It was, at the same time, a hidden opportunity. A raw force that, if understood and directed, could become the lever for true greatness. Adler proposed the idea of compensation, a concept as powerful as it is unsettling. According to him, every perceived inferiority generates in us a need for overcoming. A weak child can become a powerful adult. An insecure young person can blossom into a charismatic leader. A rejected soul can forge deeper bonds of solidarity than those who have never suffered. But, and here is the point that almost no one understands, this transformation only occurs when inferiority is faced head-on, recognized without shame, and used as fuel, not as a chain. However, Adler also warned, most people, unable to cope with the pain of their own sense of inadequacy, choose the path of false superiority. They seek status, power, approval, trying to mask their wounds with fragile masks of success. They attempt to compensate not for their true inferiority, but for the illusion they have built about themselves. And they end up trapped in an endless struggle, where each achievement brings only more emptiness, more fear of being exposed, more resentment against themselves and against the world. Adler breaks with the traditional view by stating, it is not inferiority that destroys you, it is the way you choose to deal with it. You can choose to be an eternal slave to comparison, or you can make your story of pain the foundation of your strength. The choice, although it may seem invisible, is happening now, as you listen to these words. But to walk this path of true transformation, it is necessary to break a devastating belief that has been implanted in you, that you are a defect to be corrected. As long as you believe this, every attempt at change will be just another act of hatred against yourself. In the next part, We will confront this lie directly. We will look in the mirror without fear and understand why you have never been a mistake, and how Adler believed that it is precisely in the deep acceptance of who you are that true power resides. In a world that profits from your insecurity, believing that you are a defect makes you a perfect consumer, an ideal servant for systems that depend on your constant dissatisfaction. But Alfred Adler saw a brutal truth that few have the courage to accept. You do not need to be fixed. You need to be understood. You need to be awakened to what already exists within you, not to a false, plastic, and socially approved version of what it means to be adequate. Since childhood, all you have heard is, be better, do more, achieve what is expected of you. These words were not mere encouragements. They were subtle blows, repeated like hammer strikes on your sense of worth. Gradually, you stopped asking yourself who you really are and began to measure yourself exclusively by what you are not, by what is lacking, by what you should be according to absurdly unattainable standards. Adler said that a healthy human being is not one who eliminates their flaws or becomes impeccable. It is one who integrates their weaknesses, their imperfections, their limits, and builds something grand from them. It is one who understands that vulnerability is not shame. It is the raw material of true strength. That there is no legitimate development while you hate yourself. That the drive for change only becomes real when it arises from respect and compassion for oneself, not from rejection. You are not the failure they taught you to see. You are the sum of your struggle, your silent resistance, the days you thought about giving up and still moved forward. Every wound they tried to use to diminish you actually carries the seed of your potential. But it is necessary to break the cycle. Stop trying to become someone else. Stop living in war against your own existence. Adler taught us that only when we accept, without masks, the totality of who we are, lights and shadows, that we begin to walk towards true greatness. You do not need to become someone different. You need to free yourself from the lie that convinced you that who you are will never be enough. And now that you begin to perceive the magnitude of this transformation, the moment comes to take an even more decisive step. How, in practice, to overcome the inferiority complex? How to build self-esteem that does not depend on the approval of others or constant comparison? This is what we will reveal in the next part. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebook, Beyond the Shadow. It breaks down Jung's core ideas and gives you tools to understand yourself more deeply. Link is in the pinned comment. For Alfred Adler, healing from the inferiority complex was not a matter of repeating positive mantras or masking pain with distractions. It was not about pretending the wound does not exist, nor about building a false self-image based on empty achievements. For Adler, healing requires a radical reconstruction of the relationship you have with yourself and the world. And this reconstruction begins with an act of brutal courage, taking responsibility for your own existence. The first step is to definitively abandon the role of victim. You are not to blame for the scars you carry, but you are responsible for what you do with them now. What happened to you may have hurt you, but remaining a hostage to those wounds is a choice that, consciously or not, you continue to make every day. Adler reminds us that as long as we blame the past, people, or circumstances, we remain powerless. True strength arises when you say, "The story I will write from today will be my responsibility." The second step is to stop building your identity on comparison. The inferiority complex thrives on the constant evaluation between you and others. It needs you to look sideways, to feel smaller, to wish to be something or someone you are not. Healing begins when you refuse this game, when you understand that there is no legitimate standard to be achieved, that your mission is not to be better than others. It is to be whole within your own skin. Adler also proposes a revolutionary principle: social connection. He asserts that true overcoming of the inferiority complex does not happen in isolation, but through authentic bonds, not to seek approval, but to share purpose. For Adler, living is contributing, participating, feeling useful and necessary within the human community. When you find a greater meaning than mere self-affirmation, inferiority loses its hold over you, because the focus shifts from your wounded ego to the impact you can have on the world. The practice of healing, therefore, involves three simultaneous movements: taking responsibility for your life, rejecting the poison of comparison, and seeking a purpose that goes beyond the need for personal validation. But there is something even deeper that needs to be understood. Mere awareness of these steps is not enough. True transformation requires an internal rupture, a rebirth of your identity. And for that, courage is needed. Courage to abandon the old version of yourself. Courage to face the emptiness that remains when the chains are released. Courage to reinvent yourself from a new foundation. Solid, real, non-negotiable. And it is exactly about this courage that we will talk in the conclusion. The journey does not end here. It has only just begun. Get ready. The time has come to face a truth that few are ready to accept. No one will come to rescue you from the prison you have built around yourself. No achievement, no praise, no external validation will fill the void created by the belief that you are inferior. This is a battle that takes place in the solitude of your consciousness, away from applause, away from the spotlight. And it is a battle that only you can win. The inferiority complex was taught to you. You learned to doubt yourself, to compare yourself, to diminish yourself in the face of standards that were never meant for you to reach. But now you know what was learned can be unlearned. What was imposed can be rejected. The pain you carry is not proof that there is something wrong with you. It is proof that you survived a system that wanted to break you. Adler gave us more than a psychological theory. He handed us a map to freedom. But a map alone is not enough. You must walk. You must face the discomfort. You must rebuild yourself with your own hands, brick by brick. Not to become someone new, but to return to being what you already were before you were taught to hate yourself. So now, the choice is yours. You can close this video and return to the old narrative, the one that says you are not good enough, that you need to be someone different to deserve respect, love, worth. Or you can take the first step to break this invisible chain and start writing a different story. I want to know, what is the lie that has hurt you the most to this day? What belief about yourself are you determined to destroy? Leave a comment down below. Share your battle. Because when you turn pain into words, it begins to lose the power to silence you. And don't stop here. The next video is essential to deepen this journey. Every step you understand, every layer you break brings you closer to the freedom that has always been yours. I'll see you there.